interesting. When Parul called me today in the morning to say that I should come and moderate the fireside chat with Girish, and it was about 8:30 in the morning, I said, no, I don't think I can do that. But when she said, Girish, then I said, okay, fine. I think Girish does some adorable work, and I love the work that he does. So I said, okay, and I think I know him reasonably well to be able to do this. By the way, how many of you uh, understand what purpose or communication or purposeful communication is? What is it? Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Does anybody know what work Girish does? Okay, so Girish came into the country. He was there in London, if I'm correct. And he came into the country at a time when the 2% earmarked allocation for budget for CSR came into being. And how many of you know that he not only does amplification of the work that a lot of our clients do, but with his wife, Pinky, also does implementation. So it's a powerful combination. One does implementation and the other does amplification. But together, I think they bring about a lot of impact. They are actually the change makers that are there. So he would have seen the entire journey that India has gone through since we started purposeful communication. So over to you, Girish, to tell us how has it evolved over the last 10, 12 years? 11 years, actually.
Thank you, Jyotsna. So, firstly, for people who don't know, Jyotsna and I actually worked together at Perfect Relations almost 200 years ago, and it's a delight to be on stage with her after. And I also wanted to clarify that my wife, Pinky, does some amazing work, but we do not work together. We often find ourselves at the opposite ends of the spectrum, where she may be protesting against some of the majors on plastic waste, and I might be actually driving the PR to protect them. So those make for interesting conversations at home. But coming to how purpose has evolved, I think, in the last 10 years, purpose, which started as a sort of buzzword, today has become a lot more nuanced. I think there's also become, we've also witnessed a sort of backlash against purpose, which is again primarily being driven out of the US. A few years ago, investors from BlackRock, which is one of the largest equity investors in the US, actually said that they were pulling back on companies investing in purpose because they were not seeing adequate shareholder returns. So, pulling back on ESG, and of course, in the current year with the current administration in the US, there has been, again, a pullback on everything that is purpose-oriented, whether it's diversity and inclusion, whether it's gender equity, and all the things that purpose stands for. So I think we're at a very interesting time in the industry where the macroeconomic sort of environment in which purpose was nurtured, inculcated, and brought into the ecosystem, those factors have sort of dissipated, but the need for purpose has never been stronger. So we find ourselves at this intersection of a place where the funding for purpose, the funding for social impact seems to be drying up, but the inequality, the need for it seems to be growing at an alarming pace. So I guess at this stage, Jyotsna, I think we have to sort of also evaluate, how do corporates look at purpose? Do they look at purpose as something that will help them make more profit? Or is it something that comes at the cost of profit?
So, cost of profit and for profit, I think, is a conversation we have at a later stage. But do you actually do PR for work which you're doing, which is for a purpose? I think that's a much larger question. A lot of us in communication, particularly, have to do PR for a lot of CSR activities, donations, etc. That you have companies that have contributed a lot for PM cares during the COVID times, but the amount of money probably somebody would have contributed to the PM care fund would have been far less than the amount of money they put in to amplify that information. So I think a lot depends on how you want to go about this whole communication around purpose. But I would want to ask you, from your experience, can you share an example or a campaign that led to a change that you would have gone in, probably a higher or a more allocation for funds, etc.?
So, the thing about purpose is the kind of change that we're trying to drive is really systemic. It's multi-generational. It's not something that you can run in a year's campaign and, put in an award entry and say, we achieved this change. The kind of change that we're trying to drive, whether it's in climate, whether it's in health, education or gender, is really sort of changing mindsets of people that have been hardened over years and years of sort of hardwiring.
So it's more to do with culture than transformation.
100%. And I'll give you an example. I think some of the work that we're very proud of at On Purpose is the work that we've done against to sort of curb and address violence against women. And I'll give you the example of a client that we worked with called Breakthrough. And they really sort of stand for ending discrimination against women in the workplace, women in transport, in sort of commuting, and of course, domestic violence at home. And one of the campaigns that we sort of helped them run was on introducing a caveat in films that would say that gender violence is unacceptable, pretty much the same way in which you see smoking and alcohol abuse being sort of called out at the start of the film. And the way we did this was, I think this was coinciding with the time in which the film Thappad had just come out. And it's at that time that we ran a sort of influencer campaign where we were able to get celebrities to come out and actually speak about domestic violence and violence against women not being acceptable even in cinema. And of course, while we could say that today there is still a lot of it. I mean, if you look at, what's that film, Kabir Reddy? Is it Kabir Reddy? Is it Kabir Singh, that one, and Animal and all of this. You see that there's still a lot of work to be done. But today, if you look at the Kerala has been the first state to actually adopt it. So today in films that come out of the Malayalam cinema, you will see this caveat. And this was introduced by driving a signature campaign to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, where they accepted that they were going to introduce this caveat in films before they started. So a small step with a long way to go.
That's great. But have you had any opportunity where you worked with one of the most challenging assignments that you would have dealt with, which also was very impactful at the end of the day?
Very hard to call out impact. Like I said, a lot of the work we're doing, we do a lot of work in climate action, for example, and that's not something that we can claim to have addressed. I think the entire world is trying to address it and failing miserably. And all we can do is sort of, try and move that conversation further. So in terms of impact, I think where we're not able to say that we've addressed climate change, I think if we're able to say that we've been
Drive conversation at least around it, a lot of awareness.
absolutely. I mean, we can never do less on that. So I think if we're able to tell stories of change in how lives of people are being changed as a result of some of the work our clients are doing, I think we can call that success in the short term.
And how would you measure, or what would be the KPIs for a successful campaign? Especially, I mean, considering that you service a lot of clients, how do you tell them what the deliverables will be, and how do you measure those deliverables?
So,
A lot of you would also be actually doing communication, considering corporate houses have, a mandate to do CSR. You also do PR around the CSR activities. So how do you guys, or all of us, how do we measure? I mean, peer learning, I think, is one of the best things we can learn from each other.
So Asim's in the audience, so I'm going to call him out first.
If you can pass this to Asim.
So we were helping Girish and his team recently on a project wherein we were looking at how people in the global north look at issues of global south and how people in the global south discuss issues relating to global north, and especially around climate, etc. I think he may want to share some insights from that report. So we conducted a detailed analysis of how media talks about global south and global north. So we picked up media from global north, we picked up media from global south, and looked at how they are talking about issues from the different regions. Message analysis is something that we conducted for this project.
And then did you develop the messages accordingly? To be able
That's what he's working on right now. We conducted the research, helped him identify the issues, and I think he took that report to Cannes earlier this year.
So thank you, Asim, and thank you to you and your team. You've been fabulous partners, and people, if you ever need, help with very intelligent measurement metrics, please do speak to Impact. They're great. On measurement, different types of measurement. So I can tell you with our clients now, typically, if the work is limited to media engagement, then the ways in which you can measure impact is looking at share of voice against your peers and competitors. That would be one way. But again, if you're really looking, if the objective is to drive change, then you have to look at metrics that are more outcome oriented, and I'll give you an example. Our first client was Sesame Street. So anybody here familiar with Sesame Street? No, the Muppets, the Cookie Monster, Elmo. They look at early childhood education and they focus on inculcating good habits in children before the age of 6, because that's when 80% of the brain formation really happens. So with them, the challenge that they gave us was, how would you address childhood obesity in India? Now, the impact metric to address childhood obesity in India is not going to be media related. It's not going to be share of voice related. It's going to be, how do you measure if there is a drop
behavioral change.
If there is a drop in the BMI index of children between the ages of 3 to 5, but that kind of change would take at least a generation to achieve. So the kind of funding that is also required to drive behavior change in the development sector has to be patient capital, has to be long-term, has to be looking at systemic change, not something that you can put into an award entry and submit at the end of the year.
Anybody else has any question? Okay, so if I was to give 30 seconds to you to tell us as to how you would describe the work that you do and the challenges you face. All of us who are into communication and would have done a communication around purposeful work that you do, or the development sector, would understand the pressures that are there, the challenges that are there, which is huge. And it's not, while he mentioned, media related and column centimeters, it's not necessarily column centimeters. If there's a behavioral change, if you're able to get somebody, to get more women onto, diversity that he was talking about, more women leaders in the board, etc. Those are the changes, and not all of it can be column centimeters that you can measure through. So how do you think you would describe that?
So firstly, Jyotsna, you sound very on purpose. Thank you. We face two challenges as an organization that's focused on purpose communications. One is, how do you identify what is true purpose? What is authentic purpose? Because a lot of times we get briefs from organizations that says, we're doing so much good work out there, can you help us raise awareness? Now, our challenge is we rarely have insight into how authentic that work really is. If you're a large mining and extraction firm and, 100% of your business comes from one area, but you want to use PR to only highlight 5% of what you're doing, that is more sort of energy efficiency and renewable energy related, then how do we as a firm not become ignorant participants in purpose washing? So that's one challenge we face. The second is, at the same time, we are a service provider. Our clients pay our bills. And there's only so much that purposeful work can pay because it's usually not funded as well as it should be. So the other challenge we have as an organization is on a daily basis, getting that balance right between purpose and profit. And sometimes we have to take work that could be more profitable, even if it comes at the cost of purpose, because we have to get the salaries paid on time.
That's very interesting, and it's a very, that's actually the truth of life. Unfortunately, that's what we have to do. But just a quick question on, while you mentioned about if somebody is into mining, at the end of the day, you realize that you will be depleting natural resources, and there's no shortcut to that. And even if you build as many schools or temples or hospitals, there is no solution to the depletion of natural resources. But just to understand, where do we draw the line when we are doing PR, when we are doing amplification for the work? And like you said, how do you distinguish between actual work and what is it that they're doing only for the amplification purpose or PR purpose?
So I'm going to come back to how we started out, which is it depends on how you define purpose. If you're using purpose to make more profit, that's just purpose marketing, it's purpose washing. But if your purpose comes at the cost of profit, and that's where the real magic lies, that's when it's more likely to be authentic and real. I've got a quick, before we end up, we've got 19 seconds. How many people here are actually 30, under 30, or under 30? Forget about winning. How many people here are actually under 30? Hands up at the back. Okay. Right, so I have a request for you. I was once at this conference where they asked the question, can PR be a force for good? And my reaction to that is, that should not even be a question. When people hear that we work in PR, they should naturally believe that we're using the power of our craft to make things better. And all of us have that responsibility, and that's a huge responsibility that we're passing on. I don't think we've done a very good job of it ourselves so far. But for all of you who are under the age of 30 and who are going to shape the future of this industry, we would love for a more responsible view of PR.
Thank you, Girish, and I think time's up. Thanks, audience, for being such a patient listener. Thanks.
Thank you, Jyotsna.